For a while now, AI has been a pretty good co-pilot for developers, suggesting the next chunk of code. But what happens when that co-pilot decides to just fly the plane itself? Okay, let's get into this because we are talking about a massive shift from AI being a helpful assistant to a totally autonomous agent.
Here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll cover what this assistant to agent leap really means. Then we'll peek under the hood to see how it works. After that, we'll look at the huge impact this is going to have, what it means for the developers themselves, and finally, we'll weigh the incredible upsides against some pretty serious risks.
All right, first up, let's really get our heads around this jump from assistant to agent. And I want to be super clear here, this is not just another little upgrade, it's a total game changer in how we even think about building software.
This slide just nails the difference, doesn't it? I mean, the scale of this change is kind of mind-blowing. On one side, you've got Autocomplete. It's useful, for sure, but it's basically a spell checker for your code. On the other side, an autonomous engineer. We're talking about the difference between an AI suggesting the next sentence versus an AI writing a whole novel based on a one-paragraph idea you gave it.
So here's the official definition, and this is where it gets really interesting. You don't ask it for a single function anymore. You give it a big, high-level goal, something like, hey, build me a secure login system using OAuth 2.0 and make sure it works with Google and GitHub. And then it just does it. It plans the whole thing out, writes the code across all the different files, runs the tests, and, this is the real kicker, it finds and fixes its own bugs before you even see it.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like magic, right? But how does it actually do all that? Let's jump into our next section and take a look inside the AI's mind, so to speak, to see what's really going on. The secret sauce here really comes down to two main things. These massive large language models, LLMs, and something called agentic workflows. Just think of the LLM as this brilliant, super knowledgeable brain. And the workflow is the nervous system that lets that brain actually interact with and change things in the real world. And that workflow runs on this constant loop, which is actually a lot like how we solve problems. First, the AI makes a plan. Then, it tries something. It executes a step. After that, it checks the result. Did the code work? Did it pass the test? And based on what it finds, it adjusts its next move. It just keeps doing this over and over, sometimes thousands of times, until the job is done. And this is so important. The AI isn't just spitting out text into a void. It has a full-on developer's toolkit. It can see your entire code base to understand the context. It can literally use the terminal to run commands and compile code. It can go online to look up documentation for a new library. And crucially, it can read its own error messages to figure out what went wrong and fix it. So we know how it works, but what does it all mean for actually getting stuff done? Okay, let's zoom out and follow the ripple effect here, starting with just one developer and going all the way out to the entire industry. The very first thing you'll see is just a wild productivity boost. We're talking a single developer doing things 2, maybe even 5 times faster. And this isn't about typing code quicker. It's about offloading huge, complex tasks. Imagine asking it to refactor our entire payment service from REST to gRPC, something that could take a whole team a week, and just watching it get done in an afternoon. And that's just the start. That individual boost creates this incredible chain reaction. First, you get way more productive. Then your team can suddenly take on much bigger, more complex projects. That means your business can innovate faster and cheaper than ever. And eventually, the entire industry starts to shift. It becomes less about how well you can write syntax and more about how good your ideas are. Of course, this leads to the big question on everyone's mind. If the AI is writing all the code, what's left for us humans to do? Well, the role isn't going away. It's evolving. It's shifting from being a writer of code to being an architect of systems. Think of it like this. In the past, the job was all about the small details, the syntax, the individual functions, getting that one algorithm just right. The future? It's all about the big picture. You become the reviewer, the architect. Your job is to focus on high-level design, business goals, and making sure that AI's work is actually hitting the mark. So your value starts to come from a totally new set of skills. Things like designing complex systems that can scale, critically auditing what the AI produces for security holes, being able to give crystal clear product direction, and, of course, mastering prompt engineering. Getting so good at it that your prompts are less like requests and more like perfect architectural blueprints for the AI to follow. Which brings us to our final section. Look, with any tech this powerful, you have to look at both sides of the coin. So let's talk about the incredible promise here, but also the very real perils. I mean, on the one hand, the potential is just staggering. Imagine you sketch out an app idea at lunch, and by the end of the day, you have a working MVP deployed. Or what about pointing the AI at that 20-year-old legacy code base that everyone's terrified to touch and just telling it, modernize this, add tests, and document everything? Or even better, having an agent that sees a critical bug report at 3 a.m. and then fixes, tests, and deploys the patch before any human even wakes up. But on the flip side, the risks are just as huge. These AIs can hallucinate. They can write code that tries to use a function that doesn't even exist. They can write code that works perfectly but has a subtle, massive security flaw that a human might miss. There's the danger that we become too reliant on them and lose our own problem-solving skills. And, the whole legal mess around who actually owns AI-generated code, that's a minefield we're just starting to walk into.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty big thought. For decades, learning to code has meant mastering languages, syntax, and algorithms. But as AI graduates from being our assistant to being the architect, we have to ask ourselves, is the very meaning of learning to code about to change forever?